All right, we are recording now. So again, welcome to our, I call it the Plant Pathology Road Show. It was going to be a total of 15 hours on the road, 7 webinars. So this is how we're going to get started. The entire webinar is going to be recorded in order to get credit, not just that you're here today, but you are going to take a very short quiz at the end. It's going to be done through Qualtrics. I think it's 5 questions, so it's nothing you have to study for. It's going to be nothing complex, but this is our way of record keeping. So don't forget, at the end, you have to stay until the end, and that's where you're going to get the link to the quiz. And at the end of the quiz, the last question on the quiz asks you to put in your name. And that is going to be your credit. That's what we're going to turn into Dr. Palmer's office. So remember to do that. Any questions? Any questions from anyone? I know you're all muted. Feel free to unmute. So again, this recording is going to be put on a website. Kim just posted the website there, plantdiseasetraining.ca.uky.edu. And that is going to be kind of our parking lot. All of the reference materials, anything like that, that's where we're going to put it. After this entire program is over, we will have the videos available if you want to reference back to anything. The reference materials are the links that I sent you this yesterday and this morning, or those are regular publications that we have already. One of our goals here in the department is to have all of our our information made into publications or fact sheets. That way you could always refer to it. You don't have to ask for anything, and there's no special place for anything. So that is absolutely critical, that for us, that we have everything there for you. All right, I keep leaning over to look at the time. We were going to get started with the meat of this program early, and that way we can maybe end a little bit earlier if everybody is okay with that. So I don't see any new people logging in, so I think we can get started. Again, any questions about the certificate program itself? Okay, so if you miss any, or if you're going to miss a session, that's okay. You have 7 days afterwards. If you're going to be out and you need more than 7 days, contact us directly, and we want to work with everyone. We are absolutely here to help. But you still have to register in CURS. That way you can get the emails. So let's get started a little bit. I am going to share my screen. Bear with me here. I'm going to share this screen, Kim. Okay. So we are talking today about field tools. And the first thing, or the most important thing for us, is what to do on the field visit. So our first tool that we want to share is a publication. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and I want to discuss a publication. So you are going to extra see me. So this is a publication that I want to review. Can everybody see my screen? Sometimes it takes a little bit. Yeah, you can see my screen. Okay, I'm sharing a screen. This is a publication. This is the first link that I sent you. This is something that Kim worked on for a very long time. It's kind of like the brain trigger. It helps you remember to ask all the right questions and to gather all the right information. This is one that we have available for anyone who's not familiar with a typical field visit. Maybe some of you have an animal science background and maybe not the plant science background. Some of you may be new. Some of you maybe just kind of want those triggers because you forget once you get into a field, and I use the term field very broadly, that you want to be able to kind of remember to dot all your I's and cross all your T's. So that's where this publication came from. I call it the checklist. I call it the field visit checklist. And we were actually going to name it that. And when we sent out the beta type, people were actually checking the boxes and then sending it back to us. It looks a lot like a diagnostic form. It did anyway. And this is not a diagnostic lab submission form. This is for you. This is your way of collecting all the right information. So I want to kind of go through that a little bit quickly, and for everyone to really look at it a little bit more closely and utilize it. We hope you utilize it anyway. So let's take a look at some of the sections in here. First of all, looking broadly as you get out of the truck or if you get out of your car, as you see the site. Looking for, as I always call it, looking for patterns, absolutely critical. What are you seeing? Which plants are affected? How many plants are affected? Which types of plants are affected? And then from the plants that are affected, what are the age of those plants? When was the planting date? We don't have to know exactly. If it's newly planted, if it's less than 5 years old, we consider transplant shock. If it's something that's established, it shouldn't be things like transplant shock or freeze injury or those kinds of things. So that's why we collect that information, knowing everything that's going on. Sun exposure, you know, is it on the west side? Is it a new tree, for instance, a thin-skinned tree like a maple that just suddenly has a west directed sun scorching in, those kinds of things. Lawn services, herbicides, is there a field nearby? So get all of that information that you can. A little bit, we call it site history a lot, but not just history and what's going on now and what's happening now. Okay, also, everybody knows my kind of goofy how to communicate with me by email. Those 5 pictures that I always want. We have them kind of listed here. Well, there's 4 listed here actually. So always looking at the entire landscape, if you will. What else is around? Give me shots of the neighbor's yards or the adjoining field or anything like that. Then a close-up of the plant. Then a close-up of the symptoms, whatever that is. Always wanting a close-up view of any cankers or any woody damage, if in fact it's a tree. And then from there you can go into a soil or a ground level. So that's another thing I require. So anyway, just kind of suggestions. So we don't want 10 or 20 photographs because that clogs up our email, but we don't want just one. So that's a way of communicating or a way for you to have your stakeholder communicate with you. Okay, then looking at the site more closely, and again, these are considerations, so more than one can apply. We're looking for patterns here. Patterns are really important in plant disease diagnostics. And diagnostics, not just meaning when it gets to our diagnostic lab. Diagnostics meaning what you do in the field first, and then as it radiates out into whatever specialist might be needed here. So any patterns that you see, is it all the shade plants, all the sun plants, all the bottom of the hill, all of one species, maybe everything against a new sidewalk, maybe everything closest to the neighbor's yard, or maybe there's a gradient or a continuum that's coming from what we call maybe a hot spot, and it looks like there's some type of drift. So looking for patterns is probably the most important thing that we as specialists or diagnosticians need from our end, because we're seldom in the field with you. So that's something that collecting or asking that stakeholder to collect, really important. And so through the second page of the pub, we just kind of give you some questions to ask, some things to look at, trying to trigger your memory. What's going on in this site? If you're in Western Kentucky, you're likely to have drier summers than we are in Central Kentucky. If you're in Eastern Kentucky, you might have colder winters or different types of storms. So weather, really important. So that's how we go here. Then we're looking at the whole plant. The whole plant means, what is the pattern within the affected plant? New growth, just the old growth? Is it flagging? Flagging mean one branch looking pretty bad, and always use a tree reference, apologies, but one section of the plant looking bad and other sections looking really good. How long have the symptoms been going on? Is it gradual? You know it's gradual if you see, for instance, lichens. If it's really rapid, you might see blighting. That's the quick death of leaves, and usually leaves remaining intact. those types of things. Asking lots of questions of that stakeholder. Sometimes they don't really realize how long symptoms have been showing up. They think it's pretty recent, and so asking lots of questions like that. Distribution of those symptoms over that plant: new leaves, old leaves, upper portion, lower portion, etc. If it's an entire plant, we're always going to backtrack and think about what is the common denominator. Is it the roots, the crown, the trunk? So if in fact an entire plant is suffering, we want to backtrack. So common denominator. If it's a flagged branch, for instance, you're going to track that back, look for a canker, look for some type of damage. So other things: strings, wires, excessive mulch, suckers. So any little bit of notation you can give, important. And then as we go, the actual symptoms. This is when we start trying to pull apart whether we've got an abiotic problem, meaning not living. That can be anything from weather extremes, nutrition, compaction, exposure, those types of things, poor planting techniques. And then we can also think about other biotic factors: wildlife, insects, mites, that type of thing. And here, of course, we know in biology, there's very rarely one causal agent, right? So doing that detective work to try to figure out, is there a primary causal agent? And then which other things might be secondary or tertiary? So these are kind of like your checklist to go through. Think about those as you go. We have some pictures just to kind of trigger some maybe unfamiliar terms, but this is not a picture guide by any means. We always ask you to look at branches, stems, trunks, and that soil level. That is really important. You can tell if it's a tree, for instance, if there's callousing. So you see the photo on the upper right. If there's callousing, that's been going on for a long time. That tree is trying to heal. Whereas if it's an open, fresh wound, it's not so old. It's pretty new. So that type of thing. Looking at dieback and canopy thinning, that's usually something slow. It's been a slow decline. Those types of things. Any mushrooms or bracket fungi, and that's if it's a woody plant. If you're dealing with annual plants like row crops or even greenhouse plants, there'll be different types of progressions of symptoms, but we can group them all together with some of this terminology. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Roots. Roots are hard because we don't see the roots. Usually we see a suffering plant, we see slow dieback, we'll see sudden death, we see a lot of different types of upper plant part symptoms if there is root damage. So roots are harder, and rarely do stakeholders really want us to dig up a plant. And sometimes if it's a tree, we just won't know. So considering root symptoms, especially if an entire plant is damaged. And root symptoms can range from compaction to burlap and wire still in that root ball, to bad drainage, or root rots like Phytophthora or black root rot. So that is, in a nutshell, the field checklist publication. It's actually named, let's go back here. So at the top, PPFS, meaning plant pathology fact sheet. GIN means general. It could be, it's not crop specific, and number 15. So PPFS GIN 15 is the name of the pub, considerations for diagnosis of ornamentals in the landscape. I also want to say, when we talk a little bit about publications in general, if it says PPFS, you're going to find it on the plant pathology website. It is not on the College of Ag's publication website. So those two sites don't merge. And even if you want to get into entomology, entomology has their own fact sheet series on the entomology Department of Entomology's website. So that's a really kind of a good clue. We put other departments' things on there if we think it applies. So, okay, I am going to stop sharing my screen here and get back. Do we have any questions here? Feel free to unmute if you have any questions for me. Let me give a little bit of delay. I know I talk fast, so a little bit of a delay. Anybody having any questions? Okay, so first tool we talked today's webinar is about tools, the tools you need for the field. Our first tool was that publication. Publications are indeed tools. So now we can consider what to bring to that field visit, what physical tool to bring to that field visit. And that's where we're going to get started. So what I have done, I have dumped my field kit bag, and that's a bad thing. I found lots of dirt. I even found a corroded battery yesterday. But we're going to go through some things that are in a typical bag to make a typical field visit. Some things are more specific to, say, woody plants. Other things are more specific to row crops or herbaceous plants. And we'll just kind of go through them in general. And I'll show you what I carry around. So if anybody has anything to add to this, sometimes we make assumptions. So if anybody has anything to add to this, let me know. The first thing, one of my favorite tools, are pruners. Okay, pruners get you into woody tissue. They get you plant parts that you can take with you, etc. So always a good set of pruners. These are Felcos. No one touches my pruners, so it's kind of a joke. No one touches my pruners ever, so they can stay sharp. I keep them everywhere. You should have more than one set. Also in the field bag, a good sturdy trowel. Anybody who has been at some of our practicum type programs in the past have probably received these really nice trowels. You need to really be able to dig. Depending on what your crop, your common commodities are, you may also want a shovel, a folding Boy Scout shovel, as well as maybe a big shovel, depending on, again, what you do and how often you have to dig. This is important because a lot of times, especially if we're looking at a root and we're taking a root back to examine, we've got to be able to dig. When we're sampling roots, we dig, we do not pull, because that breaks off a lot of the feeder roots. So a good trowel. My favorite one, and this one usually goes home to my house a whole lot too, this is a soil knife. And a soil knife, you see, I don't know if you can see, has a serrated edge on one side. Look at this guy. I have almost cut my finger off before. This side is a knife. You can sharpen it up. So there are a lot of benefits to having a soil knife. We want to try to give these at the practicum in September. So this one comes from A.M. Leonard, and they're $20 or $25. But you can cut roots, you can saw through roots, you can do a lot of things with these guys. So this is absolutely something that I recommend for everybody. We're going to try to get these to you. So very helpful. And another thing that I recommend, this is an archaeologist pick. So this is one that we can chip. We can dig around heavy roots. We can dig through rock, and especially those of you with hard pans or limestone rock beds, this is a really good one. As you see, it's clean. I don't use it that much, but when you do need it, you need it really above anything else. So an archaeologist pick, I think this one came from A.M. Leonard. We are going to give you a list of resources. So anybody who deals with hard soils or anybody who deals with woody plants, this is one that we recommend. Any questions so far? All right. Here's another favorite. I learned this one from Dr. Fountain. This is a surveyor's pick. This is just basically a metal rod. As you can hear, it's metal. And this is one that we always like to carry around for to check for soil compaction. Where is that hard pan? Is there a rock, a bed underneath? So these are really sturdy. They're kind of sharp on the end, so be careful. Be careful of your bag. Mine pokes through my bag a lot. We always give these. If you've been to any of our trainings, you have received one of these. We usually have a box sitting there. Some people take more than one. We will have them in September for everyone yet again. You can't have too many. So if you're seeing dieback, if you're suspecting compaction, if you're seeing, lots of plants of different species suffering, this is one that you can just kind of probe in the ground, and you will clearly feel when you hit either a hard pan or a rock. So surveyor's pick. We're being recorded, but I will tell you that Bill Fountain recommends drinking a bottle of wine and using the wine cork to protect this end. So I did not say that out loud, but wine corks as a protectant is Bill Fountain's bad joke that it's really helpful if you do cover this guy. So this should always be in your bag. Also in your bag, those of you who deal with ornamentals, and fortunately or unfortunately, it's a lot of agents, whether you're a heart agent or not. And this is a tree saw. They're very sharp, and it can get you a 2 or 3 or 6 inch branch really quickly. So this is one. These at least fold. They're not quite so dangerous. So these are really valuable when you have them. One thing you might consider as you pack your regular bag is to have maybe 2 bags. One of the things that you always need that you immediately get out of the truck with, and then another bag or box that you have these types of things that you use more rarely, but when you need them, they have to be there intact. Any questions there? Okay, we're going to keep going with tools. What else is in our bags? So pocket knife. This is Kim's knife. Bluegrass Airport has all of my knives. So I swiped Kim's knife this morning. We need knives. They should be in your bags. And we'll talk later about all the different things we do, especially we can sample cankers. We can do a lot of things with knives. We can look at vascular systems. We can do more precise cuttings. So having a knife with you at all times, having more than one knife, even if it's cheap knives, that way if you lose them out in the field, that's okay. So having a good knife or knives is really important, especially at this. Oh, I can't close it now. I closed it earlier. Okay, so there we go. So having a knife or knives, some backup things. One thing we gave you a couple of years ago was this credit card size portable knife. And so basically there is a metal blade that clips out and a folding. So it folds out. This is plastic. Any of you who have received these in the past, I'm trying to see if you can see the contrast there. So these little knives are great in an emergency. Any of you who have received these at some of our previous trainings, let us know if this is something good that we should pass out again. We kind of always look for you to tell us what might be a good fit. So these credit card size knives, they can fit in a wallet, they can fit flat into a bag. So that is an emergency backup. So we always need backups, right? Especially when we have our knives in our pockets and we bring it home and it gets left on the bathroom counter, or it gets left in, again, in a bag and goes through the airport. I carry a razor blade a lot of times. I have razor blades everywhere, just your basic razor blade. And I use these razor blades when I don't have that knife so that I can sample cankers or cut through very shallowly and look at some of the vascular tissue. If we have discoloration, how deep is that canker? How wide did that canker spread? So if you can keep these safe, maybe put them in a jar or anything like that and carry them with you, an envelope. So it doesn't really hurt to have these kinds of things with you. Questions so far? All right. So let's go back into what else. We're still working on what's in our bag. What's in our sample bag? The number one thing that we might consider, guess what? An assortment of collection devices. So zipper bags are really good. They hold in soil. They hold in sometimes whole plants if you have small plants, individual leaves, those types of things. So that will at least get you from the field to your desk. Paper bags. I save paper bags. I am one of those people. So paper bags, you can put a lot of things in paper bags. So they fold up really nicely. So you can stack a lot of bags within bags. Don't just carry a few, carry the entire box. So gallon size, quart size, those types of things. Have lots of bags with you at all times, paper and plastic. Also something that I like, and they're a little bit more pricey, are the giant bags. So the giant Ziplocs, these things are, I think you only get 2 to 4 in a box, just depending. But for anybody who works on woody plants or really has, you know, maybe don't want to dirty your car, just depending on how you're traveling. So these big bags are really helpful. We don't need them very often, but when we do need them, they are lifesavers. So if you can carry at least just one and maybe keep a box in your office, this is an extra large size, and I'm looking, there are 4 in the box. So the big bags, I reuse them. I reuse everything. So in the last 5 years, I've only bought 1 box. So it's not like it's a huge investment that you have to make. Okay. I'm going to keep going a little bit. So what happens when you do get those samples in? Oh, I have one more tool. An old book. If you're going to hold leaves, if you have any book or anything. So this is actually a classic book on the history of the hemp industry in Kentucky. And I have, go figure, hemp leaves in here. So sometimes this helps us press it flat, and it keeps it from wrinkling, especially if we have more than one stop. So I know it's a little bit cheesy. This is more practical in your office, but if there just happens to be a book or somewhere flat that you could just put an old book or something, old phone books work in your office when you have lots of things, but sometimes the smaller books, you can just flatten it out. Maybe even a couple of pieces of small cardboard and envelopes, mailing envelopes. So this is another one. Don't ever hesitate to press leaves flat. When you do collect those samples, though, if you're into a larger area, you want to consider that you're going to have more than one sample. You might collect whole plants from 3 different sections of a field. Which one is which? You've got to be able to label them. Sometimes if you're making more than one stop in a day, you've got to be able to label them some way. So at one point we gave you waterproof notebooks. Again, feedback on any of these things. Are you using them? How helpful are they for you as agents? So they are waterproof paper. Always write with a pencil. Pencil doesn't bleed if it gets wet. I also carry, whether it's Post-it notes or index cards, and so you're going to write on each sample and drop it into that bag. Sometimes you can double bag if you're dealing with soil. Put the soil in a bag, then put that bag into a second bag, and then the label will go in between, so it doesn't get wet. So use a little bit of just common sense and decide what the best way is to label. Pencils really work. Mechanical pencils don't get broken as easily. I'm guilty of never being able to find a pencil, but really pencils do you well. You can use a Sharpie to write on the outside of your plastic bags, but to double label, to put a paper label inside your bag of any sort is super helpful. We make assumptions that we remember, and in reality, we don't remember. That's just human nature. So be careful of that. All right. Any questions so far? I'm going to kind of lean over and look at some of the comments. Okay, no comments so far. I'm going to pause just a little bit. So if anybody has a question, if you want to comment, what's in your bag? What's in your field kit? What's in your car? Give us an idea.
Nicole, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Who is it?
This is Wayne in Jefferson County.
Hey.
Do we need to keep a journal for just all the areas that we go to sample, and just have a record in case we have to go back to a particular area? We can look in our journal and say, yes, this is what I did on this date. I know I had to do that in graduate school for plant surveys and that type of thing. Should we do that?
That's always helpful. My recommendation is that if it's a commercial grower, please take notes. Some of you who have been around a long time, don't send everything to the diagnostic lab. When you send a sample to the diagnostic lab, we've got that record for a very long time. You can always call us back, or you can look in your email and say, oh yeah, I remember this grower had this disease, 3 May seasons or July is in a row. But if you're not sending those types of records, you might consider having that record of your own. And again, especially commercial growers. If you ever believe that this might turn into a lawsuit or any type of legal issue, take lots of notes, take photographs. I didn't even talk about cameras. You know, we have our phones. Our phones take great pictures, and but don't forget to download those. Have somewhere to put them in files. We can't keep everything. We can't journal everything. But just try to think about what's best. Of course, I'll tell you, the more you have, the better. It's hard though. It's honestly hard to have everything you need in hindsight. So I know as agents, you are using your personal vehicle, so you are logging miles. I don't know if you're writing down where you go, but that might be a good place to put those kinds of things if you have a paper log somewhere. Just kind of log in like what's going on. And then maybe again in hindsight, having an idea of what was there in the past.
Thank you.
Okay. Another thing, I was going to grab a spray guide. You always carry a spray guide with you. That's another thing you might want to. Oh, Kim is grabbing me one. I write in all my spray guides. But when I travel, this is the fruit spray guide. But I bring a spray guide with me. Usually, I bring mine where it says Nicole's desk copy. This is mine. I have extra notes in mine. And then I always bring one for the grower. So depending on what grower you're going to see, it's always helpful if you kind of hedge what resources you might need when you go there. If you make a fungicide recommendation, you want those records as well, because then you become responsible for that recommendation. So if you just kind of go into maybe a homeowner and you say, oh yeah, that rose bush is dead. I don't know what happened to it. It's too dead to know. And, that's really not as worth logging as maybe if you have a commercial wheat field, you suspect virus or, whatever, and then you give a recommendation. I would keep that documentation somehow, which of course it seems that when we really need it, we don't have it, right? Speaking of resources to take with you, we have a couple of scouting guides in fruit. We have apple and strawberry. And we are working on bramble right now. The vegetable group has even more. I think they have 6. These are also mobile apps. Mobile app meaning you don't download the app. It's actually a mobile website, but it's phone friendly. It's device friendly, and it works like an app. So anyway, scouting guides kind of give you a way to just look at a picture and know what it probably is and what it probably isn't. One thing about field visits is when you go, the grower wants to know, is this an emergency? And I think that that's one of the biggest things that we can give a grower is peace of mind. We can say, you know what, it's not this, or that. I will take it back with me and we will try to find a few more details, but we know it's not worst case scenario. So that kind of gives growers a peace of mind. We have these as hard copies as well. So depending on which grower, if you have a commercial grower, try to take something to them to hand them. Usually you know something before you go to a site. So you can download some fact sheets, take some things with you, take a spray guide, but some of these scouting guides, you can just leave with them. And that way, that's credibility for you, and also you can help that grower feel better and maybe be a little bit more patient as we go through the diagnostic process. Some of our diseases take a long time to go through the process, especially when it gets really busy. Questions there? I see someone recommended long-handled pruners, so loppers are really good. Soil probes. I wanted to talk about soil testing too. We're absolutely going to talk about soil testing and compaction at the practicum, and we're going to actually do a little bit of playing with soil. So soil probes, everyone should have one. So soil probes, I think every county office has soil probes. Is that correct? If not, let us know. That's something that we might want to consider putting together later. So if any of you don't have a soil probe in your office, just shoot us an email or something. So soil probes are always good, not just for soil testing, because I'm not plant soil sciences, but they help us learn a lot of other things. All right, are we ready to move on? I'm looking at the time. I don't want to be late. All right, my favorite tool, you know, what does a plant pathologist give you every time they visit your county? The good old hand lens. Hand lenses are absolutely critical. We have a lot of new agents on board, but any of you more established agents know what happens to our eyes on our 40th birthday. They're toast. We can't see anything, but at the same time, I wear my glasses, it seems more and more. But even if we have good eyesight, plant pathogens are small. Rarely do we see plant pathogens, but we can look closely. We can look for survival structures like pycnidia, etc. So we're going to use a hand lens. Every time you see me, I'm handing out hand lenses. They come in little boxes. I don't see where they are. So you may see them come to you in just like a little box when we give them. If you don't have one, you should. They're not expensive, under $5, and these are lighted actually. So they have a little light here. So it lights it up, again, for those of us who don't have very good eyesight. I use a hand lens with my glasses off. That is my preference. My eye doctor tells me otherwise, but I use all my devices with my glasses off. So I want to touch base really quickly on how to use a hand lens. So your hand lens comes to your eye just like your eyeglasses. Your hand lens is not going to occur like this. Your hand lens is going to occur at your eye. Depending on which eye you close and which eye you're comfortable with, you can use either one. And I like to put my hand against my face. That steadies my hand. That is my preference, so you should try it. So hand lens at your face, and then the sample coming up until it comes into focus. That's one thing. We're going to do a lot of playing with that, but you should all have hand lenses. And if you don't, and if you need one for the summer, shoot us a message. We'll put one in campus mail for you. Hand lenses are critical, and use it correctly. I like to give them to my commercial growers. They need to use them as well. So you can determine whether you have something that needs examination. If there is, for instance, a bad or dying leaf, you can look at these leaves and say, you know what, is this a leaf symptom? So again, is this a leaf symptom? Oh, you know what, I don't see any sign of fungal structures, for example. And there's more to it than that, of course. I'm simplifying, but helping a grower to see a little bit more as well. And speaking of grower, there are a lot of things that we can help growers with. Some of you may have these cube magnifiers. They're actually a jewelry magnifier. They have a little focus tool on the top, and they just sit right on top of a sample, and then you can use the focus knob. That sometimes is helpful for somebody who can't close an eye, who is not as steady, or even some of our growers, especially, as some of our growers get a little bit older, they just don't have those motor skills. We have some really established growers, especially in the fruit industry, and we like to kind of help them. So these are some things that we've given away. They're really cool. They say plant pathology on them, which makes us very happy. So some of you may have these already. I never use it personally, but I give these away. So you may have those. And then also for my growers, I recommend an old-fashioned magnifying glass. This is something that, again, if they can't use that hand lens, to help show them. When we're in the field, when we're talking to a grower, we've got to convince them that what we saw in that small hand lens is real. So sometimes if we have these kinds of tools just in our glove compartment, they're not that big. They're really cheap. But if we can have this and we can show that grower a little bit, we're sharing what we see, and that gives us credibility. So an old-fashioned magnifying glass, I got this one for free somewhere. It's plastic. And then we can leave these with the grower sometimes. This one came from a seed company, actually. So it was just a giveaway. Another option for magnification, we've given these away as well. These are credit card magnifiers. So they're thin, they fit right into your wallet, and they act as a magnifier as well. You can put them up high, or you can use them down low. So they only give you between 4 and 10x magnification, but that gets you a little bit closer. So again, goodie bags that you've probably seen from us. You've received these from us. And again, freebie kind of stuff, just hang on to it and give it away. And a magnifying glass, I highly recommend to help you. What strength hand lenses do we recommend? I think these are, which size were these, Kim? Do you remember? This is 20x. These illuminated 20x loops. We got these from Amazon. We can send a link, but again, Philip will send you one. Just remind us, and we'll put one in the mail for you. We are going to have these at the practicum. Okay. So you have to think about, with your magnification, what are you trying to see? All right, you're not trying to go microscope level. You're in the field, so you don't want to have something just so detailed you can't put it in a context. So this is 20x. These are usually 4x, which is really helpful for those of us whose eyesight's going. I think we've had these at 10x before, just depending. So any questions there? All right, so that's my field bag. That's what's in my bag. Sometimes, depending on where I'm going, I have another tool that I really like. Where's my ProScope? It's set up here. All right, this is a fun tool, everybody. This is called a ProScope. I don't know if you can. So it's a ProScope, and it mounts to your iPad or a phone clip. This is a phone clip. You clip your phone right in it. The ProScope goes right in, and it aligns with your iPad or your phone, and you turn it on. There's a light, and then you basically set it right over. So I'm upside down here. So it clips on. This is my iPad. It clips right on, and then it clips on here. See, here's the camera to my iPad. So the clip has it aligned. It's not hard. And then I turn it on. There's a little light, and I have it upside down. So, and then you can just engage the camera on your iPad, and that's a great teaching tool. So your phone, if you're out in the field, you can snap that picture. You can do a screenshot, snap that picture just out of the camera of your device or your phone, and okay, we have a pop-up. I'm sorry, I'm looking. Logged in from another device. Messenger is now inactive. I think I have activated my iPad, and it's trying to sync with us. So excuse me 1 minute. Sorry about that, everybody. I don't know what's happening. Okay, so I love ProScopes. That's a great teaching tool, especially if we're trying, again, to build credibility with the grower and say, look, this is what I see, or look, this is what I don't see. It's a really good way. They come, the little phone clips come in. About half of our agents have them. They're about $150. We're going to play with these at the practicum. So anyway, that's another one that I have. All right, I need to speed it up. We are at 10 o'clock. A few other things we have are soil probe. This is a pH meter. This one goes right into the soil. So this pH meter is going to give us pH. pH is really critical when we are dealing with a lot of issues, abiotic issues most of the time. And we can use the extremes. We could talk about blueberries and acidic soils. And here we are on limestone beds here in Kentucky. But pH matters a lot more in a lot of other situations. Availability of nutrients, a lot of ideas. Okay, I have a question. How accurate are your pH probes? This one is pretty darn accurate. I think this one is, where can I get these? This one came from, oh darn, where did this one come? Gimplers. This one came from Gimplers. And we can make you a list of some of the things that we have. But these are accurate within about 0.2 of a point. You calibrate it. This one doesn't have to be calibrated very often. It could just be wiped off. So this one, you don't have to dig up any soil. You just loosen the soil and you kind of stick it in and you pat your soil around it and you wait about a minute or two and you've got a pretty good range. Now, if you're having real problems, major issues, and if it's something that, half a point really matters, then you would submit a soil sample. Okay, this is not substituting a soil sample. This is just giving you a quick pH range. All right, if you're seeing 7 or 8 in a pH range and you see a lot of plants in the landscape suffering, you might want to just do a quick test. Also, if you are not within range at all, you might be seeing a lot of secondary disease issues, stress pathogens, and insects that are attracted to stress plants. So this is one that I recommend for everybody. You remember I used to have my landscape business, but I tested every soil in every bed that I ever worked in. It's fast, and there's no charge on this one. It's about $130, $125 or so. I'm going to go over a couple of other things for anybody who is working with greenhouses or water. EC meters, that's electroconductivity. This gives us the salts, basically the soluble salts. This is critical for greenhouse production. Anybody who has greenhouse production, you should know the EC. You should be able to help growers with that. And also checking pH of your water, pH meter for any of your spray tank water. We're going to talk about this if anybody is going, I guess we haven't announced it yet. In July, we're having an agent training, train the trainer for small ag production for specialty crops. So we're going to be using a lot of these. Spray water, pH is critical. For instance, Captan, the half-life of Captan is drastically reduced if the pH is not within range. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit later. So if you have a lot of spray tank issues, this is pH meter for your water. And then this is electroconductivity. This is one that I recommend for greenhouses. Questions there. And these are just kind of bells and whistles kinds of tools. If you have a lot of specialty crops, you should have these. Okay. If you have a lot of row crop agriculture, then you would not utilize these as much. Although spray water could be one, especially with any specialty crops. We have more and more vegetables popping up in the state. Any questions? Okay. I know I talk very fast, so I don't want to pass anybody up if you have questions. All right. So as I kind of wait for anybody to ask any questions, remember we talked about what's in our toolkit. We talked about our field visit checklist or our considerations publication. Any of your scouting guides or any of your spray guides, they always have to be in your person somewhere, in your truck, in your bag, so that you can utilize them. Any extra printing of any other resources before you go, if you have an idea of what's going to be going on. Lots and lots of bags, collection materials, and a way to label them. You're going to have trowels and pruners, knives, any of your soil probes. You're going to look at soils, even if you're looking for disease, soil probes, and any of your bells and whistles, pH meter, EC, etc. If you're always going to have a bag for collecting soil tests to submit to regulatory services. Other questions? Okay, let's move on. All right, so let's talk about samples. You get into the field, what do you look for? And I have a couple of samples here. We're going to talk just a little bit about how you collect it and how you store it to get it to your office. Next webinar, we're going to talk about what happens when that plant gets to your office and is on your desk. But how do you preserve or protect that sample? How do you collect the correct sample? So I brought a few things this morning. We're not going into true diagnostics. I see a label there. All right, so we're not going to go into true diagnostics. One thing I want to point out is when you are collecting, Kara, do you recognize these? Kara back, I got these in Taylor County a few weeks ago, and they're still hanging around. You're collecting more than one sample, okay? And we collect more than one sample because if you are going to play diagnostician on your desk, that's great. I highly recommend it. But when you do so, you are going to be sacrificing a sample. And if you sacrifice that sample, it does not come to the diagnostic lab, okay? So you can play with one, and then you can come back and you can ask yourself, to compare to what goes on in the diagnostic lab. So I have a tray, and this is to keep your desk clean. Very, very seldom do I see a clean agent's desk or a clean plant pathologist's desk, but I always have a tray because I am really going to make a mess. Yesterday I had hemp seeds everywhere. I had some seed heads and hemp seeds flew everywhere. I'm sure our custodial staff does not think it's as funny as I do. But okay, so we have more than one sample. We suspect this was a commercial grower, as Kara knows. We collected, I think, 5 at that time. I collected some that looked very good, and I collected some that looked very bad, and a couple in between. And that's what a diagnostician needs. Same if you have a bridge, you need it to go through that continuum. This one actually is recovering. So this is a bacterial disease. But at the time we did not know. It's recovering for some reason, but we did not know what was wrong. Okay, so we suspected electroconductivity, EC, or soluble salts. We suspected a lot of things. We were not sure. But one thing I recommend if you have a small plant is to look at the roots. So don't hesitate to look at roots on anything. Pull plants out of the pots. If you're going to dig up entire plants, put them in some of those bags that you collected. And once you get it to your desk, you can't see this. It's a little bit harder, but you can pull this guy apart, shake it very gently. And if you have field soil, it's not this easy. And you can rinse some of this in water and look a little bit closer. Then you could get that hand lens. You could look at those roots. What do they look like? These are not healthy. These are not bright white. They are not turgid. So that is when we decide, you know what, I'm going to send an entire plant to the diagnostic lab, not just a plant part. So at the time, we see a lot of browning of the flowers, and we see some marginal leaf scorch, which was a bacterial disease. But this one looks like it's got probably a pythium or some kind of root disease. So, and I don't remember the exact diagnosis of this one, but having a way to pull it apart and look at this entire plant, we're going to look at the crown, always looking at the crown, okay? Whether it's a field plant or one you take with you, you're looking at the crown, always to work on like the bed of your truck or something where it's high and you can look really closely. So don't hesitate to take plants apart in the field. If it's a woody plant, it's much harder. But anything from ornamentals to row crops, you can definitely do this in the field on your tailgate, or if you take it back to your desk, have a pan. So that's an example. So whatever Kara, I'm using you as an example, whatever Kara would have suspected, this was a commercial grower. We need confirmation. If she didn't find anything with the EC or bad practices or anything abiotic, she would want to confirm through the diagnostic lab. And to do that, she would have not sent this one to the diagnostic lab. This was hers. And she would have sent 3, I think we sent 3 or 5 to the diagnostic lab. And then that way she can compare that diagnostic report to what she suspected. Now, she's not going to see oospores from her pythium root rot, but she's going to say, you know what, this really looks like a root disease. So it's a way for you to practice as an agent. And I see we have Adam Leonberger online. He is a plant pathologist, but a lot of other agents don't have this training. So play with it. And we highly encourage that. If you want to give us a call and say, hey, help me work through this, I want to learn, this is a good way to do it, and small plants make it really easy. So that's an example of one way that you can play with a sample. When you do have, I have another one here. So this one is in really bad shape. This does not come to the diagnostic lab. So let me reiterate that if it's not dying and we don't see some kind of continuum from healthy to really symptomatic, there's not much we can tell. So one plant in this condition is not going to tell us much. Sometimes we get lucky, but we need a continuum. We need a lot of samples. And that being said, leaf samples, it's not often that the leaf is the problem. Leaf samples, so we can look at a lot of problems with leaves. We can get our hand lenses, and we don't see any type of structure. So this type of thing, this magnolia outside of our door, actually here in our building, we know this is a pH issue. We have compaction and we have a very high pH on an acid-loving plant. So we know this is what happens. This is a deficiency that gets worse every year. We know this only because we know the history of this plant. We have checked, we have probed it, we have checked the soil. We know about this plant. But for a homeowner or for an inexperienced agent, this really looks like a leaf spot or a plant disease, when indeed it is not. So that's why we go through this entire diagnostic process in the field, so that when this goes to the diagnostic lab and the report comes back no disease, we're not at a loss and have to start all over and have lost a month in that process. So sometimes we have stem. This is a hemp plant. You see the spots. This is actually secondary to what was compacted soil. So just knowing a lot about the entire field. Another thing is, as we package, and I talked about Ziploc bags. So as we get it to, let's see if we can show you this. As we get it to our offices, we have to unseal it and get some air circulating. So I don't know if you can see this fuzzy growth. No, not really. You can see this fuzzy growth. We don't want mold. Okay, we don't want any secondary pathogens growing. We don't want to ship on a Thursday or Friday to the diagnostic lab, and by the time it arrives in a sealed zipper bag, we're not going to get the true pathogen. So a lot of these saprophytes and a lot of these storage molds grow very fast. So sometimes by the time the diagnostic lab receives a sample, we don't get what they need. And speaking of, we could talk a little bit about packaging. What time is it? We have about 15 minutes. I'm going to take 5 and talk a little bit about packaging. So sometimes we do have to send to the diagnostic lab. I always recommend small boxes, and so that we can box and package. I sent you a publication on packaging for the diagnostic lab. So just a small box is okay. So anything like this, whatever you need to package, and do it well. We don't want things rolling around. We absolutely are going to keep humidity out of things. So this is our, maybe I don't want to touch these, I'm not sure. So ooey gooey strawberries. Let's see if we can see. Gooey strawberries, this will not ship to the diagnostic lab. By the time this arrives, these strawberries are going to be toast. And we cannot determine anything from something in this shape. So being in a sealed plastic bag makes it worse. If indeed this was, say, a commercial grower, we would wrap these strawberries in paper towel. Well, first we would select strawberries that were had minimal symptoms. We would wrap them in paper towels and in paper, and then when we did, we would put them in a plastic bag to prevent leakage, but we would leave it open. There would be paper towels in there to help absorb some moisture, and then they would be packaged carefully in a box. So these smell really bad. It's a shame you can't smell these. So being very careful when you're shipping fruits and vegetables, that you've got something absorbent in there and you're not sending them at this stage of decay. So I did want to mention that. And then finally, I've got a Whopper here that I wanted to give an example when we're dealing with woody plants. As you can see, woody plant samples can be very challenging. What do you do with this when you examine this? How do you get this to us? Not everyone can drive to their local lab. So I just wanted to point out, remember the box that I had earlier? So this is where your pruners come in. You can cut them into pieces this way, and you can send a stack of pieces to the diagnostic lab, and then this will fit in a large envelope or it will fit in a box. So we can reduce the size of a sample greatly, okay, and even smaller than this. So we don't have to ship very big and loose branches. We can cut it into pieces. If we have a large plant, we can send branches and roots separately. We can cut them in half and package them well. All right, and I'm going to backtrack just a little bit, back to my bad maple sample that I've got here on my desk. I did want to talk about, we mentioned cankers earlier. See, we have a canker here. You can see where this, let's see if I can angle it for you. You see where there was a bad pruning cut and then the decay fell through. This is just one. It wasn't a bad tree. So if you have just one problem, that's not to be alarmed. But what would you do with this? Is this indeed a pathogen? This is where our razor blade comes in. So if anybody wants to play plant pathologist on their desk, they can use the razor blade to slit it very shallowly. So as you can see, that canker is probably not fungal at all. It's probably not a plant pathogen because there's a very clear margin. And when I did my slitting, I see very healthy tissue there. This was a plant pathogen, you would see a gradient of decaying tissue there. So this is probably just callus. It probably just broke. Not to say that this broken branch here is not an open door for a pathogen to come in later. But these are the types of things that you can definitely explore at your desk. And we're going to talk about these things as our webinar series goes on. So I just wanted to mention that. Best way to package roots. Okay, we have a question. How do you package roots? Let's go back to our plant. I'm going to bring our plant back up. So how would you send this to the diagnostic lab? Well, first of all, I don't have any newspaper. I would consider newspaper here, strapping tape, paper, whatever you need to do, and I would secure this very tightly this way. There is some space between the top of the pot, so maybe just put some crumbled paper down and then tape it down really carefully. There are skewers in this one. Actually, I put those in because these are skewers from my kitchen. These skewers came in, so you can come in with a bag. You can come in even with a paper bag, and you can set it over it to hold it still. Whatever you need to do to hold it there, and then you would lay it in the box, and then you would put crumpled paper around it. One of the second, and let's see if I can share screen with you guys. All right, I am going to share the second. Nope. Oh, apologies. There we go. Here, everybody can see this publication, PPFS Gen 9. I sent you this link. It's also on our website, Submitting Plant Specimens for Disease Diagnosis. And it's really about getting the right sample and packaging that sample. How to collect it, dig, don't pull, include pictures if possible. And then we go through in this table, seedlings, how to package them, how many to send, what type to send. We go through whole plants. There are some examples. Look, this agent actually used a plastic bag to put around it. Okay, so there are some examples of how these whole plants and these roots are being packaged. So we kind of go through a little bit at a time. You can always package your leaves in an envelope or between two pieces of cardboard. Those are really the easiest ones. And then branches. So we talk about cankers here and how you're packaging those. What exactly to send. The more the better, again. And then what happens when you have large plants. And there's your rotten fruit. And all the way to the right, picture number 21 is what happens when you don't use absorbent paper with a plastic liner of some sort. Our mail carriers don't appreciate it, neither do our diagnosticians when that arrives. So anyway, this is a publication that's very helpful for your staff. Okay, any questions with that? We did not talk about our diagnostic forms. Uh-oh. I'm sorry, everybody. You get to...
It's over on my screen.
Oh, it's on Kim's screen. Uh-oh.
You just drag it across.
Okay. I am sorry, everybody. I am going to switch. Oh, darn. It's trying to log me off. Am I off?
No, you're still
No. Here we go. I'm going to stop my share. Now I'm going to share a different screen. Apologies. Okay, are you sharing the screen? All right, you should be able to see it. So what this publication is, this one just went on. you are, I'm sorry, I'm scrolling away. This is kind of our diagnostic manual. It's just been revised. It doesn't include a lot of information, but it tells you again what type of plant in general, and that is where you find your diagnostic forms. These accompany every sample, okay? Every single sample, and we need this information. We ask this information for a reason. We want to know what's going on. You'll see if you do the site visit checklist, you're going to see a lot of these same things. We want to know your patterns. What patterns do you see in the field? You are our feet on the ground. Okay? So that is with the link that I sent you. Any other questions? Okay. So I think this is pretty much what we want to cover. We've got 5 minutes. We can take questions. And, oh, I know what I want to share. Where's our quiz?
It's on your screen.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen again, everybody. I'm going to keep talking. I've lost my cursor. Here it is. All right, I'm going to share my screen again. You get to see me. And, all right, here's some references. So our training website, this is where we're going to park this video. This is where we're going to park the links that we gave you. So it's going to be here under webinars. When we do the field practicum in September, we're going to have more information there. So plantdiseasetraining.collegeofag.uky.edu. That is our site. Kim is going to send that link. Secondly, we have to know you are here today. This, and Kim is pasting this in the comment box, so make sure you click the chat box. We have a quiz, just 5 questions, and they're not hard. These 5 questions are going to document. The last question is your name. This is what we're turning in to Dr. Palmer's office. You have to do this part in order to get credit. So that is really probably the most important things that we could do at this point, is give you these credits. Reminding you that there are 7 webinars total, plus 1 practicum. You have 4 choices of the practicum. You attend 1, and that will give you the complete certificate, and that will give you the complete credit, the 15-hour credit plus the certificate. And we have a few surprises on the end for anybody who completes. If you don't want to complete, that's okay. You can pick and choose individual sessions, and that is what we're here for. I don't know. Okay, I have a question if the video will be downloadable. I'm not sure. Yes, I think so. We're not that technologically advanced yet. We're going to play with it. We're going to try. I know it will be, we're going to put it on YouTube. And so basically through the webinar, through our link, through our plant disease training site, it will just basically give you the link to YouTube. And it will kind of be a hidden URL. You can't go to YouTube and search for us. You have to go through that site. Well, we're working on that. And hopefully as time goes on, we can make these webinars a little bit more polished so that we can leave them up for the masses. But right now, we're just kind of sorting through the ability here. Okay, so remember to take your quiz. Remember to check back at that website if you need any of those resources. Again, this webinar is going to be recorded and available for 7 days for anyone who's not on this webinar. After 7 days, it comes down. You can't get credit after that unless you specifically message us and say, hey, I need you. I was out of town or I was not able to attend. Okay? Now questions. If anybody has a question, you can definitely unmute. If you have any questions about field kits, if you have any questions about the program or anything, we are here to listen.
Nicole, this is Wayne again in Jefferson County. If we receive a sample on Thursday morning, I guess we have 2 options: to ask the grower to bring in another sample on Monday, or take the sample that he brought in on Thursday morning and put it in the refrigerator and send it on Monday morning.
That's correct. Those are some suggestions, depending on what it is. Okay, if it's a rotten fruit or vegetable, it doesn't need to stick around at all, if possible. Mushrooms need to definitely go in the fridge. And things like roots or leaves, if you press them, sometimes your cool desktop will be fine. just depending on the type of sample that it is, Wayne. If it's mushy, try to ask them to give you another one. And sometimes if it's mushy, then it's not going to make it anyway. You might want to help explain to them why you need those with minimal numbers of symptoms that are the firmest. And maybe you can kind of help them learn how to bring you a better sample. Anything that's a stick, a woody stick, you can put that in the mail. That doesn't matter. If you've kind of pressed leaves, that's okay too. But if it's just something that's fleshy and will rot, or you might want to reconsider. So again, it depends what it is. But the way our system works is that our samples come into an office. They don't go to the diagnostician's door. And so usually they're, it can get caught up in, so here in Ag North, before our diagnosticians bring those to the lab. So in Princeton, it's a little bit different. Everyone knows that the Princeton facility is undergoing major construction. So there are those delays. Don't take those chances, especially with a commercial grower. One thing too is specialists are always here. Specialists are here for agents. We are your resource. We're not your grower's resource as much as we are your resource. So give us a call. Send us pictures. Say, okay, can this wait until Monday? What do we need to do? Do you think this is critical? So sometimes having that communication with us will get you better communication with your grower, better sample, etc. So don't hesitate to do that either. We're not telling you, hey, you can't have access to us on Thursday and Friday. That's not what we're saying. Feel free to open that communication with us and we'll help you out.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Any other questions? Okay, everybody, don't forget to click the link. We had 46 people on today, I think. So I'm hoping that in the next couple of days, everybody can do the quiz. I recommend doing it now, 2 or 3 minutes. We promise. This is not a test. It's just a record keeping for us. And we will see you in a few weeks. Actually, in 3 weeks is our next webinar. It's going to be kind of quirky like this. We're going to actually use some of these proscopes and dynolites and microscopes. And then after that, they will all be more PowerPoint based learning. So we're going to have one more of these, conference cam and my dirty table. And after that, we're going to get nitty-gritty details. So everybody have a good weekend. Happy Friday. And I will see you soon. Thanks. I'm going to kind of go through some of these, make sure none of these comments.
You might be able to stop the recording as well.